There are moments that split your life in two, the before and the after. I know the exact second mine cracked open. It was a Tuesday. A smoothie stand. 47 strangers with their phones raised. And one word, 3 letters, delivered by the man who used to call me his wife. Fat. He said it the way he used to say everything that was meant to wound. Low, smooth, almost pleasant, like cruelty dressed in a pressed shirt. Like he had been carrying it in his pocket all morning, saving it for a crowd. If you are new here and this kind of story makes your chest tight, your hands still, your breath catch somewhere in your throat, subscribe right now. Because where we are going you will not want to miss a single word. My name is Penelope Osei Carter. And the man who grabbed my braids in the middle of Westfield Grand Mall and announced to 47 strangers that I was fat and sad and alone, that man was my ex-husband Derek Weston. He had no idea that he had done it in front of my current one. I had come to the mall for something small and ordinary. A birthday card for my sister Bina. A pair of running shoes because my therapist, Dr. Pauline Rhodes, the kind of woman who told you hard things gently and then waited for them to land, had said that moving my body would help move the grief out of it. I had been doing well. 3 whole months of well. New apartment. New job at an architectural firm downtown. I had stopped checking the locks twice before bed. I had started eating breakfast sitting down instead of standing over the sink waiting for something bad to happen. And then Derek appeared at the entrance of the card shop like a bad dream that hadn't gotten the message. You look terrible, he said first. Smiling. That particular smile of his. The one that dressed insults up as observations. I tried to walk past him. That was when his hand shot out and closed around my braids. The yank was sharp enough to curve my neck sideways. I heard someone nearby gasp. I saw, in my peripheral vision, a mother pull her child against her hip. A teenage boy raised his phone. An older woman clutched her shopping bag with both hands and did not move. Nobody moved. You think anyone else is going to want you? His voice was still that pleasant poison thing. Look at yourself. You've let yourself go. You're fat, Penelope. Fat and sad and alone. You should be thanking me for 2 years of my life. My eyes were dry. That surprised even me. 2 years ago that word, that specific word from that specific mouth, would have hollowed me out on the spot. I would have shrunk. Apologized for taking up space. I knew that version of myself. I had worn her for years like a coat that was 2 sizes too small, and I had finally slowly taken her off. Let go of my hair, Derek, I said. Flat. Steady. The way you read a grocery list. Or what? He pulled harder. You going to call somebody? Nobody's coming for you, Penny. They never do. He was wrong. But he didn't know that yet. Derek. My voice was so calm that he actually blinked. The last time you put your hands on me I stayed quiet. I went home. I covered it up with long sleeves and longer stories. But I am not that woman anymore. I held his eyes. Take your hand off me. He laughed. The laugh of a man who needs an audience to feel large. He looked around at the phones, the crowd, the small theater he had built around himself. You see this, he announced. She's giving me warnings. This is my wife. Ex-wife, I said. And she has clearly lost her mind since the divorce. He shook my head, literally shook it, braids still in his grip, and I felt the hot sting of tears trying to rise. I refused them. I pressed them back down with everything I had. I would not cry in front of Derek Weston. Not today. Not ever again. But before I could say another word, the mall went quieter. Not silent. Just quieter. The particular quiet that enters a space when something has changed inside it. The way temperature drops before rain, before you can see a single cloud. I felt it first. A shift in the air. The crowd, which had been frozen and watching, began to part. Not quickly. Not with alarm. The slow, instinctive parting of people who sense something approaching that they do not want to be standing in front of. Derek felt it too. I watched his eyes move over my head. I watched his grip loosen just slightly and then, out of pride, tighten again. Then came the footsteps. Unhurried. Deliberate. The kind of footsteps that had never learned to rush because they had never needed to. The kind that said without a single word, I have arrived. Everything that happens next is already decided. And then a voice. Italian accented. Warm on the surface the way old stone is warm in afternoon sun, but underneath it layered with something that had edges. Something you did not want turned toward you. Caro. One word. The Italian for my love. For darling. For I see you and I am here and you will not be touched again. I turned as far as Derek's grip would let me, and I saw my husband, Lorenzo Cattaneo, tall in a way that rearranged the geometry of whatever room he entered. Dark hair, silver at the temples, the kind of silver that looks earned, not aged. A jaw that sculptors tried and failed to reproduce. A charcoal jacket, dark trousers, nothing that announced itself, nothing that needed to. He did not dress to be seen. He dressed the way powerful men do when they have stopped needing to prove the power. But it was his eyes that stopped people. Dark, completely steady. The eyes of a man who had looked at genuinely dangerous things for long enough that very little else registered on the same scale anymore. Right now, those eyes were on Derek's hand. The Katanio name did not appear in newspapers. It appeared in the kind of conversations that stopped the moment the wrong person walked into the room. 6 generations of a Sicilian family whose reach extended across shipping lanes, real estate empires, and rooms where governments made decisions they didn't want recorded. A name that opened doors, and had on more than one occasion made people disappear through them. Derek had no idea who was walking toward him. He was about to find out. Who? Derek started. My name, Lorenzo said, stopping 2 feet away, his gaze moving from Derek's hand to Derek's face with the unhurried certainty of a man taking inventory of a problem he has already solved, is Lorenzo Cattaneo. A pause that was not dramatic. Just his natural rhythm, the rhythm of a man who never hurried words because words in his world had consequences. And that, the smallest tilt of his chin toward me, is my wife. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Derek's mouth opened, closed. The hand in my hair went slack. She's not. We were. I know who you are, Lorenzo said. The same quiet. The same absolute stillness. I know what you did to her. I know the years of it. I know every specific thing. His eyes dropped, slowly and deliberately, to Derek's hand. And I know that you are going to remove that hand. Now. Not a shout. Not even a threat in the conventional sense. A fact delivered by a man whose facts had a way of becoming true. Derek Weston, 6 feet, gym-built, 15 years of making people afraid. Let go of my braids. The crowd exhaled. I hadn't realized they'd been holding it. I straightened my neck slowly. I did not rub the ache. I would not give Derek that. Lorenzo stepped to my side. Not in front of me. Beside me. His hand came to rest at the small of my back. Light, steady, an anchor that makes no demands of the ship it holds. Penelope. His voice was different now. Softer. Just for me. Are you all right? I looked at him. This man I had married in a quiet courthouse 4 months ago, with 2 witnesses and white flowers I'd bought myself from a street vendor because I hadn't told anyone it was happening. This man who had, in 4 months, never raised his voice at me. Never moved my things without asking. Never made me feel for a single morning like the walls were closing in. This man who was, by every account I had ever heard whispered, one of the most dangerous men alive. I'm fine, I said. And for the first time that afternoon I almost believed it. Derek had not left. Of course he hadn't. He was a man who only knew how to escalate or sulk. Grace had never been in his repertoire. She married you? His voice had lost its polish. Bruno. Kitten. Penelope, how long have you even known him? I started to answer. Lorenzo spoke first. Long enough. 2 words. Quiet as everything else, he said. But Derek flinched. And what exactly do you do? Derek pushed. The question of a man reaching for ground and not finding it. Lorenzo looked at him for a long moment. Today, he said. I came to find my wife. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. Derek took a full step back. A full body flinch that the teenage boy with the phone caught on camera. And Lorenzo produced a folded handkerchief. He held it toward me without looking away from Derek. For your neck, he said quietly. I took it. Soft fabric. Monogrammed. Cedar and something else. Clean, old, expensive in the way that doesn't announce itself. We're leaving now, Lorenzo said to Derek. Final. Settled. Not goodbye, not a warning. A statement of the next thing that would happen in the world. And you, a beat, will not do this again. Derek stared. Then something in him, the architecture of his cruelty, the scaffolding of years spent making himself feel large by making others feel small, just collapsed inward. Quietly. like a building whose supports had been removed without anyone noticing. I saw it clearly for the first time, a small man. He had always been a small man. He had just spent years convincing everyone, including me, otherwise. He stepped back. Lorenzo walked me out of Westfield Grand Mall with his hand at the small of my back. The crowd parted. Phones still raised. 47 people watching, recording, witnessing. Kept my head up. Outside, the afternoon air hit cool and clean. I stopped on the pavement past the automatic doors and stood still, breathing. I could feel my own heartbeat. I could feel the exact spot on my scalp where Derek's grip had been. I could feel the absence of Lorenzo's hand now that he'd stepped away, giving me room the way he always did, as if he understood instinctively that the thing I needed most before anything else was space to breathe. "How did you know I was there?" I asked. "Johnny saw him follow you in. He was a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching the street. He called me immediately. Johnny. One of his men. There was always someone nearby. That was the world I had married into. I hadn't fully decided yet whether it was a safe world or simply a different species of dangerous. Lorenzo." I turned to face him. "We need to talk." He looked at me. Those dark, patient eyes that had, from the very first night, unsettled me in a way I couldn't name. Like looking at deep water. Calm on the surface. Immeasurable underneath. "Yes," he said. "We do." My phone rang. Unknown number. Area code I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail. Almost. "Miss Carter." A woman's voice. Clipped, professional, the voice of someone who had trained all warmth out of their tone on purpose. "My name is Agent Carla Denning, Financial Crimes Division, Federal Bureau of Investigation." A pause timed for impact. "We need to speak with you about your current husband. We believe you may be in danger." The afternoon air went cold. I looked at Lorenzo. He was already watching my face. Not the phone, my face. And something in his expression, barely there, just a flicker behind the eyes, told me he already knew. That he had been expecting exactly this door to open. That he had known it was coming and married me anyway. The story is only just beginning, and I promise you have not seen the first real twist yet. Subscribe now so the next batch is waiting for you the moment it drops. "I'll call you back," I said. "Miss Carter," I strongly. I ended the call. Lorenzo watched me. "The FBI," I said. He exhaled through his nose. Not the exhale of a man caught. The exhale of a man who had been carrying something heavy and had just been told the weight was about to increase. "Not here," he said quietly. "Here," I said. "Right now. Did you know they were watching you when you married me?" The question sat between us in the cool afternoon air like a living thing. He held my eyes for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "One word. But the kind of one word that opens a door onto a much larger room." "Then we are going to sit down," I said, "and you are going to tell me everything. Not the version you think I can handle. Everything." Something moved across his face, something I had not seen there before. Not fear. Not calculation. Something that looked, against all my instincts about men like him, like relief. The specific relief of a man who has been alone with the weight of something for a very long time. "Everything," he said. "Yes." We went to a corner cafe 3 blocks away. Mismatched chairs, chalkboard menu, a young woman behind the counter who gave us no attention at all, which was exactly what I needed. Lorenzo ordered 2 coffees without asking me what I wanted. Then when we sat, he pushed both cups to my side of the table. "Choose which one," he said. I had noticed this about him from the very beginning. He always gave me the first choice. The first pick. The first turn. Every time, without comment, without making it a performance. I had never said anything about it. But I had always noticed. I pushed 1 cup back to him. He wrapped both hands around it and began to talk. Lorenzo Cattaneo was born in Palermo to a family whose name had meant one thing for 5 generations. Power. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that ran for office or sat in boardrooms with nameplates. The other kind. The kind written in favors owed and debts carried, and the particular respect that lives in the space between admiration and fear. His father Enzo Cattaneo had run the family's operations, shipping, real estate, and the darker business underneath both, with iron efficiency and zero tolerance for doubt. The Katanio name opened doors that stayed closed for everyone else. It also locked others from the inside. Lorenzo had grown up understanding all of this. He had never wanted any of it. My father died 4 years ago, he told me, his voice level, his eyes on the coffee cup. When he died, everything came to me. Not because I chose it, because I was the only one left. My brother Matteo, a brief stop, something tightening around his jaw. He is gone. The choices he made took him somewhere I couldn't follow. And so the family came to me. The businesses. The people. The debts. The reputation. He looked up. And the enemies. How many enemies? I asked. Enough, he said. He set down the cup. The most significant is a man named Fabrizio Lore. He worked with my father for 20 years. When my father died, Fabrizio expected the Katanio operations to dissolve, to become available. He was wrong. He could not accept being wrong. Lorenzo folded his hands on the table. For 2 years he has been constructing a case against me. Not just through the FBI, through his own network first, feeding them information, shaping what they find. He wants what my family built. The only way to take it from me cleanly is to have me destroyed legally. Convicted. Publicly disgraced. Pause. And everything my father built gets absorbed into his operation while I sit in a cell. And the FBI investigation, I said. Real or Fabrizio's fabrication? He looked at me with something I recognized as genuine surprise, that I had arrived there so quickly. Both, he said. Some of what they have is real. Old things. My father's sins, not mine, but the name carries them regardless. And some has been planted carefully by Fabrizio's people inside Fabrizio's timeline. He paused. I have been cooperating quietly with a separate law enforcement body for 14 months. An arrangement that cannot be disclosed yet. When it is, the charges against me will not hold. Will not hold or will disappear? I asked. There is a difference. I know there's a difference. I'm asking which. Will not hold, he said. I have done things I am not proud of. That is true and I will not hide it. But I did not do what Fabrizio is accusing me of. And I am not my father. I sat with that. Outside, the city continued. Buses, pigeons, a grandmother chasing a child on a scooter. The ordinary world, going about its ordinary afternoon while I sat across from my husband of 4 months and tried to calibrate what I actually believed. Why me? I asked. In the entire world, why me? The question I had been holding since the courthouse. Since the street vendor's flowers. Since the morning I woke up 3 weeks into knowing this man and thought, how did this happen and why does it not feel like a mistake? Lorenzo was quiet for longer than usual. I met you at your worst, he said finally. I remembered. The steps outside my lawyer's office. The final divorce papers from Derek, signed, done, finished. I had told myself I wouldn't cry. I cried. Ugly, heaving, in public crying that I couldn't stop and couldn't hide, and I had hated myself for it. Lorenzo had been there for a meeting with the same law firm. A business matter I'd learn later. He had stopped. He hadn't offered advice. He hadn't tried to fix anything. He had simply sat down beside me on the step at a careful distance and said, there is a cafe around the corner with very good almond cake. When you are ready. I had laughed. Actual laughter which I hadn't done in months. You were real, he said now. You were not performing. Not trying to impress anyone. You were a person having the worst afternoon of her year and then you laughed anyway. Something shifted in his voice. I have spent my entire life around people who are always calculating. Always performing. You were the first person in a very long time who simply sat with me. Like I was just a man on a step. Pause. I did not want to let that go. I looked at my coffee. Lorenzo, I said slowly. If the FBI is watching you and Fabrizio is watching you, then by marrying you I am also watched, he said. Yes, I know. And I should have. You should have told me. Yes. Before the wedding. Yes. Why didn't you? The cafe was quiet. The woman behind the counter scrolled her phone. A couple near the window argued softly about something small and domestic and completely normal. Lorenzo looked at his hands for a long moment. Because I was afraid you would leave, he said. I stared at him. This man. The man who had just walked through a crowd in a shopping mall and made a gym-built bully release my hair with a single sentence. Admitting he was afraid. Of me. Of the possibility of me walking away. I didn't know what to do with that. I genuinely, completely did not know. I need time to think, I said. Take whatever you need. I might call that agent back. That is your right. I might be very angry at you for a while. Something in his expression, just a flicker at the corner of his eyes, became the ghost of a sad smile. I know, he said. I stood up. Stay, I said gently when he started to rise. Finish your coffee. I'll find my own way. He sat back down. He did not argue. Did not follow. Did not reach for his phone to have Johnny trail me at a distance. Or if he did, I didn't know about it, which was perhaps the same thing in a different coat. I walked out into the afternoon and thought, what have I walked into? But underneath that thought, underneath the confusion and the fear and the entirely reasonable anger, something else. Small, stubborn, embarrassingly honest. The handkerchief, the coffee cups, the step outside the lawyer's office, the almond cake offered to a woman he had known for 40 seconds who was crying on a public staircase. I don't think he's lying. That might be the most dangerous thing of all. I called Agent Denning back from my old apartment, the one I kept paying rent on even after moving into Lorenzo's townhouse. Dr. Rhodes said it was healthy to keep a safety net space. I hadn't mentioned it to Lorenzo because I needed one thing that was entirely mine. Denning answered on the first ring. Miss Carter. Thank you. Tell me what you want, I said. No preamble. 2 years of Derek had burned my patience for people who wrapped grenades in small talk. A beat of surprise. Then, your cooperation. Doing what? Staying close to your husband. Reporting what you observe. Providing access to certain documents. Naturally, through the course of the marriage, nothing that would seem unusual. A careful pause. In exchange, full immunity from any charges arising from your association with him. Relocation assistance if it becomes necessary. I looked at the bare wall of my old apartment. I had taken down every photo and piece of art when I moved. White rectangles of nothing. You want me to spy on my husband, I said. We want you to help us build a case against a man who may be far more dangerous than you understand. And if I say no? Agent Denning's voice stayed smooth. Professional. The voice of someone who had delivered this particular line before. Then you remain a person of interest in an active federal investigation, which creates complications for your employment, your professional licenses, your firm's perception of you as a liability. There was. The real sentence finally arrived. I breathed slowly. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Miss Carter. And I would strongly advise against mentioning this conversation to your husband. I sat on the floor after I hung up. Not the couch. The floor back against the wall staring at the ceiling. The kind of sitting that means you are too full of things to choose a proper piece of furniture. My phone buzzed. Lorenzo. I hope you are eating something. The almond cake at the place near our street is very good on bad days. I held the phone and stared at the message for a long time. Then I put it face down on the floor. I let myself feel the full weight of everything. The mall, Derek's hand in my hair. The word fat landing in front of 47 people, Lorenzo's voice cutting through the crowd like something the crowd didn't know how to resist. Agent Denning's careful threat. And underneath all of it, deep and stubborn as a weed in concrete. 4 months in a house where nobody shouted. 4 months of space given freely. 4 months of being treated like a person whose choices mattered. And I had felt safer in those 4 months, inside a world the FBI called dangerous, than I had in 4 years inside a marriage everyone called ordinary. I picked the phone up. I did not reply to Lorenzo's message. But I did not delete it. 3 days passed. I went to work. I drew building plans. I ate lunch at my desk and answered emails and was, by every outward measurement, a woman going about her normal life. On the 4th day I came home to find Lorenzo in the kitchen. Not alone. Sitting at my kitchen table, with the posture of a woman who had never once been the least capable person in any room she had entered, was a stranger. 60 perhaps. Silver hair pinned back with severity. Plain gray dress. A cup of tea cradled in both hands. Sharp eyes that were also somehow kind. Ah, the woman said, looking at me the way a specialist looks at a case she's been briefed on. So you are Penelope. Lorenzo turned from the counter. I had never seen him look anything close to nervous. He did now. Hi Aunt, he said. Rosaria Katanio. She came from Palermo this morning. Rosaria set down her tea. I came because my nephew, for the first time in his life, did something that genuinely surprised me. He married someone. She studied me without apology. And then I heard what happened at the mall. Her clinical expression shifted. I wanted to meet the woman who stood in a shopping corridor with a man's hand in her hair and didn't flinch once. How do you know I didn't flinch? I asked. There are cameras everywhere, she said simply. And Lorenzo is not the only Katanio with people. A small, precise smile. Sit down. I will make tea. And I will tell you things about this family that my nephew, a pointed look past me, has clearly neglected to tell you. Behind me, Lorenzo briefly looked at the ceiling. The closest thing to an eye roll I had ever witnessed from him. I sat down. And Rosaria Katanio began. She poured tea with the economy of a woman who never did anything in more movements than required. 6 generations, she said. That is how long the Katanio name has meant something in Palermo. Before us, fishermen, builders, honest men. Then one generation made a deal they should not have made, and the family stepped onto a path that was, she chose the word deliberately, inconvenient. That is one word for it, I said. It is the polite one. A dry look. The honest word is what it was. Power built through fear, money moved through shadow, a name that could protect you or ruin you depending on whose company you were in. She glanced toward Lorenzo. Then Lorenzo was born. And he was, from the beginning, deeply inconvenient. He asked questions, I said. She raised an eyebrow. You already know this. I'm guessing. He asked questions, she confirmed. Why do we do this? What do we owe to the people we've damaged? What would it look like to do it differently? His father thought it was a phase. Pause. It was not a phase. Lorenzo stood against the counter with his arms folded, listening. Not interrupting. Letting her say it. I could see, in the line of his shoulders, that this was not a comfortable accounting to hear aloud, and he was choosing to hear it anyway. That said something. When Enzo died, Rosaria continued, Lorenzo had a choice. Walk away from the name entirely, and leave everything his father built to be swallowed by Fabrizio lore. Or stay. Take control. And try, quietly and from the inside, to dismantle what should be dismantled and save what deserved to be saved. She held my eyes. He stayed. Not for the money or the power. There are easier ways to have both. He stayed for the people. The legitimate workers whose livelihoods depended on Katanio infrastructure. The communities in Palermo that had relied on Katanio presence for 3 generations. The people who would have been left with nothing if Fabrizio had moved in. She paused. Fabrizio lore is the kind of man who treats people as resources. Lorenzo is not. The FBI doesn't see that distinction, I said carefully. The FBI, Rosaria said with patient precision, was handed a portrait painted by a man with an agenda. They see the name and the history. They do not yet see what Lorenzo has been doing with it for 4 years. Her eyes were steady. They will. I looked at Lorenzo. The Interpol arrangement. He nodded once. For 14 months you've been building a case. Against Fabrizio. Against his entire network, Lorenzo said. 43 people across 9 countries. The case is nearly complete. When it breaks, the fabricated evidence Fabrizio fed to the FBI collapses completely, because the source is destroyed. He unfolded his arms. The FBI investigation against me will not survive it. I turned this over slowly. It was a large architecture of moving parts, and every structure like that had a single point of failure. And if something goes wrong before the case breaks? Rosaria and Lorenzo exchanged a look. Brief. Freighted. We deal with it, Lorenzo said. What does we mean in that sentence? I asked. Because right now I'm sitting in our kitchen learning that the FBI wants me to spy on you, that a man named Fabrizio is trying to destroy you, that there's a 14-month Interpol operation I knew nothing about, and I am trying to understand whether I am your wife, your liability, or a piece you placed on a board. I looked at him steadily. Which is it? The kitchen was very quiet. Lorenzo pushed off the counter and sat down, directly across from me, not at the head of the table, not beside Rosaria. Across from me, close enough that I could see the lines near his eyes. The lines of a man who had been carrying things that were too heavy for one person to carry alone, and had done it anyway for years. You are my wife, he said. That was never a strategy. I need you to know that. He paused. The timing of our marriage, I won't pretend it was without benefit to my situation. A married man is harder to isolate, harder to trap in certain legal frames. Fabrizio knew this and I knew he knew it. But that is not why I asked you to marry me. That is not the reason I sat down on those steps. He held my gaze. I know you have no reason to believe that right now. I know I gave it to you too late. But it is true. Rosaria said nothing. Just sat with her tea and let the room be what it needed to be. What did Denning offer you? Lorenzo asked quietly. I blinked. How did you? Because it is their method. They call the spouse. They offer immunity. They apply pressure to a pressure point. A brief, exhausted pause. I am not asking what you said. That is yours to decide. I am asking because I want you to know that whatever you choose, I will not punish you for it. He held my eyes. That is not who I am. I believed him. That was the frightening part. Sitting across from a man whose family name sent ripples through international law enforcement, inside a marriage I hadn't told anyone about, with the FBI in one ear and Fabrizio lore somewhere on the horizon, and I believed him. I didn't agree to anything, I said. I told her I needed to think. He nodded. But I need you to understand something. Kept my voice level. There was iron underneath it. I could feel it, the particular iron that grows in a person after years of having no voice and then slowly, painfully reclaiming one. I left one marriage where I had no choices. Where everything that happened to me was decided by someone else and I was just supposed to accept it. I will not do that again. Not for love. Not for loyalty. Not for any reason. I held his gaze. If I am going to be in this, in us, I am in it fully. Real information. Real seat at the table. Or I walk. Silence. Then Lorenzo said, ask me everything. I'll answer everything. Rosaria smiled into her tea. So I asked. We talked for 4 hours. Lorenzo answered every question. The complicated ones, the uncomfortable ones, the ones where the answers made me sit still for a moment before I could move to the next. He didn't smooth anything over. Didn't rush toward the parts that made him look better. He answered the way he did everything. Steadily, without pretense, with the patience of a man who had decided, somewhere along the way, that the truth was the only thing worth giving. By the time Rosaria stood, stretched, and announced she was going to bed, having already apparently arranged herself a guest room, with the quiet efficiency of a woman who organizes things before other people notice they need organizing, the kitchen lights were on against the dark windows and the tea had gone cold. I sat with my hands around the cold cup. When Derek called me fat, I said. It wasn't on my list of questions. Came out on its own. You didn't say anything about it. You didn't try to reassure me or tell me he was wrong or... No, Lorenzo said. Most people would have. Because it didn't need to be argued with, he said. Derek was completely wrong. That is obvious and it needs nothing from me to make it true. What you needed wasn't someone to correct him. He paused. You needed someone to simply be there. So I was there. Something shifted inside my chest. Not dramatically. Not the way things shift in stories with sudden music and revelation. The quiet way. The way a window opens in a room that has been sealed too long. A small thing, but the air that comes through it changes everything. Then my phone rang again. Different number. Eastern European accent or further. I couldn't place it. Smooth in the deliberate way of a man who had practiced smoothness until it became automatic. Penelope Carter. I want you to know I have great respect for what happened at the mall today. You held yourself extremely well. I looked at Lorenzo across the table. He was reading my face. I don't know you, I said into the phone. No. But I know your husband very well. Pause. I know the FBI approached you. I want to offer you a third option, better than anything they can give. Another pause. My name is Fabrizio Lore. And I think it is past time we spoke. The name was Coldwater. Kept my face completely still. I'm listening, I said. Across the table Lorenzo had gone very still. This is the moment where everything you thought you understood gets turned inside out, and the next batch carries the twist that changes it all. Subscribe now and turn on your notifications. This story is nowhere near finished. Fabrizio spoke the way he apparently did everything. With precision, patience, each word placed and level before the next one followed. Your husband is not who you think he is. Nobody ever is, I said. A short pause. I heard the surprise in it. Good. I want to meet, he said. Public place. Your choice. I want to show you photographs, not documents which can be fabricated. Photographs. Evidence that will completely change how you understand the last 4 months. Give me 24 hours, I said. Of course. Warm now, the warmth of a man who thinks he has won. And Miss Carter, be thoughtful about who you discuss this call with. Not everyone in that house is on your side. The line went dead. I set the phone on the table and looked at Lorenzo. Fabrizio Lore, I said. Something moved across his face, not shock, not panic. Something colder and more contained. The expression of a man watching a door open that he has known for some time was going to open. What did he say? I told him everything. Word for word. Lorenzo pressed his fingertips together and looked at the middle distance. He has photographs, he said after a moment. He says he does. He does, Lorenzo said, quietly, with the particular weight of confirmation. I went still. Explain. 4 years ago, before my father died, before I took control, I met with Fabrizio. I believed it was a legitimate business meeting about a shipping expansion my father was pursuing. It was not. It was a front operation for moving money. I discovered this 3 months later and pulled the Katanio name out completely. He held my eyes. But the photographs from that meeting, me at his table reviewing his documents, shaking his hand, they exist. Without the context of what happened 3 months later, they look exactly like what he will tell you they are. A partnership, I said. Yes. And you gave Interpol the full timeline. Everything. The withdrawal, the communications, the proof. It is part of the case. He paused. Fabrizio doesn't know about the Interpol arrangement. He believes those photographs are leverage over me, that I've been hiding. He is going to show them to you and tell you that I married you as a shield. That you are a calculated move. Is that true? No. Then what are they? Evidence that 4 years ago I made a mistake I corrected as fast as I could, he said. And that Fabrizio has been weaponizing it ever since. I looked at him carefully. If I go and meet him, he will try to turn you, Lorenzo said. He will offer safety, money, a story where you are the victim of my manipulation and he is the only honest person in the room. He is extremely good at this. Some of what he says will feel convincing. Pause. I won't ask you not to go. What will you ask? Take Rosaria. I blinked. She has known Fabrizio for 30 years, he said. She will hear what is underneath his words. And, a very slight pause. He will not be comfortable performing in front of her. I looked at this man for a long moment. Complicated, layered, infuriating, patient. Who had shown up at a mall and walked me out with his hand at the small of my back. Who had answered every question without flinching. Who had said of a man grabbing my hair and screaming the word fat into a crowd, "It didn't need to be argued with, you know who you are." You trust me completely, I said. Not a question. Just the realization of it arriving. Yes, he said. Without hesitation. I picked up my bag. Don't follow me, I said. I know. I didn't go to my old apartment. I walked 4 blocks to a park I had found in my second week in the neighborhood. A narrow strip of green, an iron bench, a fountain that made more noise than beauty. I sat in my coat and I looked at the water and I thought about Derek. 4 years of a marriage that looked correct from the outside. The posts, the dinners, the story everyone was told, and was a slow erosion on the inside. Love that turned out to be a word for ownership. A woman who had spent 4 years learning to take up less space so the walls wouldn't close in. I thought about the divorce papers. Those steps. Crying in public, which I despised, unable to stop. A man sitting down at a respectful distance with an offer of almond cake. I thought about 4 months of waking up in a house where no one shouted. Where questions had answers. Where space was given without being used as punishment. I thought about Fabrizio Lore. Not everyone in that house is on your side. I thought about Agent Denning. We believe you may be in danger. 2 different voices delivering the same warning, both with everything to gain from my fear. And then Lorenzo, whatever you choose, I will not punish you for it. I sat with all of it until the fountain became musical and the cold stopped registering. Then I called Rosaria. I need your help. I know, she said. I have been waiting for you to ask. Come home. I will make fresh tea and tell you what Lorenzo is too protective to say himself. He's protective of you? He is protective of everyone he loves, Rosaria said, in the tone of a woman reading from a verdict she reached long ago. It is his finest quality and his most frustrating one. Pause. Come home, Penelope. Come home. I walked back through the evening streets and I noticed, for the first time, that the walk did not feel like moving toward something uncertain. It felt like returning to something real. That distinction was everything. Rosaria talked for 2 hours. What she told me about Fabrizio lore didn't come from FBI files. It was older than that and more personal, 30 years of watching a man operate. He had a wife, she said. A good woman who trusted him completely. He let her trust him, built on it, used it as architecture. Her family's connections, their money, their access. When she had given him everything useful, he simply became a different person. Not gradually. Overnight. As if he had been wearing a face and took it off. She looked at me. He will try to make you feel seen. Understood. Like he is the only person in this situation who genuinely cares about what happens to you. He is very good at this. It is how he breaches defenses. What does he actually want from Lorenzo? I asked. The Katanio name. She said it with the weight of a woman who had watched this particular want corrode things for years. Not money. Fabrizio has money. He wants legitimacy. 6 generations of Palermo presence. The relationships with politicians, civic leaders, legitimate businesspeople, people who don't know the darker history but know the name and extend it trust. Lorenzo has spent 4 years methodically moving the family into the clean world. Another 2 or 3 years and the Katanio name would have been entirely legitimate. She set down her cup. Fabrizio cannot allow that. A clean Katanio is useless to him. He needs Lorenzo destroyed before the transformation is complete. Then he steps in as the rescuer, the rehabilitator, the new face. While underneath, everything runs exactly as it did before, but worse because Fabrizio has no loyalty to anything except what he can extract. And the FBI case gives him the mechanism to destroy Lorenzo. Yes. A conviction or even just the public disgrace of charges. And Fabrizio inherits everything while wearing the face of a savior. I sat with it. Then I said, I'm going to meet him. Good. I'm going to let him show me the photographs and make his offer. Yes. And I'm going to record every word. Rosaria smiled. Slow, wide, genuinely satisfied. Now, she said, you sound like a Katanio. I set the meeting for the next afternoon. A cafe in the city center. My choice, bright with wide windows, because I had read once that people are more careful in natural light and I wanted Fabrizio careful. I wanted him performing his most polished version of himself, because the more complete the performance, the cleaner the recording. I didn't tell Lorenzo the full details. Only that I was going Rosaria with me and I would bring him everything afterward. He had looked at me for a long moment. Be careful. Not because I don't trust your judgment. Because I know exactly what Fabrizio is capable of. What I didn't tell him was what else I had done. I had called Agent Denning that morning. Not to accept her terms. To offer different ones. I will meet Fabrizio Lore and I will give you the recording, I said. One condition. You share it immediately with the Interpol unit Lorenzo has been cooperating with, and you coordinate all next steps with them. No unilateral moves. A long silence. How do you know about the Interpol arrangement? Because my husband told me, I said. Because unlike some people in this situation, he tells me things. Silence. Then, I'll need to make calls. You have until 2 o'clock. She called back at 1:45. Agreed. And for the first time since she'd introduced herself, she sounded like she meant something without a secondary meaning buried inside it. I walked into the bright cafe at 2 p.m. Rosaria was already at the window table, upright, tea in hand, the absolute stillness of a woman who is never early because she considers herself always precisely on time. I checked the small recording device Rosaria had produced from her bag that morning with the matter-of-fact efficiency of a woman who had kept one for years and didn't think this worth explaining. And Fabrizio Lore walked in. Compact. Neat. Gray-haired, well-dressed. A face that arranged itself into warmth or severity with equal fluency. He saw Rosaria and stopped. Just half a second, smoothed immediately, then smiled and crossed to the table. Rosaria. Pleasantly. I didn't expect you. I know, she said in the tone of someone who finds other people's discomfort mildly instructive. Sit down, Fabrizio. He sat. He placed an envelope on the table. He looked at me with eyes that were warm and calculating in the same breath, a combination I now recognized on sight. I want you to understand that everything I'm about to show you comes from genuine concern for The photographs, I said. Show me. A recalibration, quick, near invisible. He opened the envelope. They were real. Not altered. I could see that immediately. Actual printed photographs of Lorenzo at a table with Fabrizio for years ago, exactly as described. I looked at each one. Dates in the corners. Documents visible on the table in one shot. The shipping contract Lorenzo had pulled 3 months later. The specific context absent, exactly as he'd warned. What do you believe these prove? I asked. Fabrizio built his narrative carefully with a craftsman's patience. Lorenzo as predator. Lorenzo who had identified my vulnerability, my divorce, my pain and used it as raw material. The marriage as a calculated legal shield. The warmth as performance. I let him talk. Rosaria drank her tea. The device in my coat pocket recorded everything. When he finished, he leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping into something intimate and warm. I want to help you get out of this safely. You have done nothing wrong. You are a victim of a very sophisticated manipulation, and you deserve to have someone in your corner who... Fabrizio, Rosaria said. Quietly. He stopped. She knows, Rosaria said. The warmth in his face didn't vanish. It rearranged, like watching a painting change subject. Something colder and more precise came through. Knows what? He said. Everything, I said. The cafe went on around us. The espresso machine, a burst of laughter from another table, the city outside the window. And Fabrizio Lore, for the first time in what I suspected was a very long time, did not know his next move. He recovered quickly. Within moments the composure was back, smooth and settled, the face of a man who has practiced recovery the way other people practice breathing. He straightened, folded the photographs back into the envelope with unhurried hands. You are a remarkable woman, he said. I'm an informed one, I said. The distinction matters. He looked at Rosaria. You told her. Lorenzo told her, Rosaria said. That is the point you keep missing. You have spent 30 years assuming the Katanio family operates the way you operate. Everyone behind their wall, no one trusted, everything compartmentalized. That is not this generation. Something passed through Fabrizio's eyes. Not anger. Something older. Something that looked strangely like grief. Like a man who had spent so long in a world without honest speech that he had simply forgotten it existed. The recording device, he said to me. I noticed it when you sat down. I didn't react. I said nothing because I wanted to see what you would do with it. Whether you were working the FBI's angle, the Interpol angle, a pause, or whether you were simply a woman trying to understand what she had walked into. And I said, all three, he said. Simultaneously. Another of those small pauses. That also was not what I expected. Fabrizio. Rosaria's voice carried something underneath it now. The particular authority of a woman who has been patient long enough. We are not here to be offered anything. We are here because Penelope wanted to hear your intentions directly from your mouth and now she has. That is all. He stood. Straightened his jacket. Tucked the envelope under his arm. He looked at me with an expression that was for the first time unguarded. You should know, he said quietly, that what Lorenzo is building, the clean version of the name, it won't be a smooth road. There will be others who want what I want. The world he is trying to leave doesn't release its people graciously. He paused. But I will tell you something because it is true and because I gain nothing by saying it. He held my eyes. He loves you. That was never a calculation. I watched him after he met you and men like us don't change our behavior for strategy. Strategy is too cold for that. What I saw in him was a brief dry exhale, deeply inconvenient. He left. We watched him walk through the door and into the city afternoon. A neat, compact man disappearing into the ordinary world. Well, Rosaria said. Well, I agreed. He was not wrong, she said. About Lorenzo changing. I watched it happen too. Do you think the Interpol case holds? I asked. She considered it genuinely. I think Fabrizio just made his most significant mistake. Which one? He told you the truth. About the love. It served no purpose for him, it actively undermined his position, and he said it anyway. She picked up her tea. Men who speak inconvenient truths are men running out of armor. He's tired. And tired men make reactive choices instead of planned ones. Reactive men make mistakes. I reached into my coat and switched off the recorder. Let's go home, I said. Lorenzo was in the study when we returned, at his desk, a document open in front of him that he'd clearly been staring at without seeing. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway. I held up the recording device. He looked at it. Then my face. Then, the first time since I had known him, the steadiness cracked into something raw and unguarded. Something openly, completely relieved. It was a look that suited him badly and moved me entirely. It went well, he asked. It went honestly, I said. Which is better? I crossed the room and placed the recorder on his desk. He looked at it, then back at me with the expression of a man holding a question he isn't sure he should ask. He said something, Lorenzo said. I can see it. Something you're still carrying. I looked at him. This man. Carrying a name he hadn't chosen, trying to clean something he hadn't built, patient in a way that cost him something real. Who had answered every question. Who had shown up at a mall because his instinct was to come, immediately, to where I was. He told me you love me, I said. He said it showed. He said it was inconvenient. Lorenzo went very still. I told you it wasn't a strategy, he said. Quiet. Just the fact of it. I know, I said. I believe you. I've believed you for a while. I held his gaze. I needed to hear it from someone who had absolutely nothing to gain from saying it. Something in him, some final brace thing released. Penelope, he said. And then stopped. Because there was nothing to add. My name said like that in his voice was the whole sentence. I sat in the chair across from his desk. We have work to do, I said. He blinked. Work. The recording needs to be in the right hands tonight. I've already coordinated with Denning on the Interpol exchange. Walk me through the rest, the timeline, the contacts, every step. I held his gaze. I am not a spectator in my own life, Lorenzo. I forgot that for a while. I remember now. Something crossed his face that I hadn't seen there before. Something that looked, against all the composure, against all the years of carrying things alone, like gratitude. He reached into the desk drawer and set a thick folder in front of me. From the beginning, he said. We worked through the evening side by side in the quiet study. Rosaria made dinner in the kitchen. The smell of it moved through the house, something warm and real and ordinary, while we worked the extraordinary thing. 3 weeks later it broke. Not loudly. The biggest things never break loudly. It broke in documents, in evidence, in a joint press conference held by Interpol and the Italian Financial Crimes Authority. Fabrizio Lore's network, 43 individuals, 9 countries, was formally named in one of the largest financial crime prosecutions in European history. The FBI case against Lorenzo Cattaneo was suspended pending review. Agent Denning called me the morning after the press conference. The charges will be formally dropped within 60 days. The fabricated evidence has been traced entirely to Lore's network. Pause. What you did, the meeting, the recording, the coordination, it made the difference. Thank you for being flexible, I said. Thank you for being smarter than I gave you credit for, she said. And there was something in her voice. From a different kind of person it would have been warmth. Take care of yourself, Miss Carter. Katanio, I said. A beat. Then, right. Take care of yourself, Miss Carter Katanio. Derek sent a text 3 days after the press conference, somehow connected my name to the news. I'm sorry. About everything. At the mall. All of it. I mean it. I read it. And I deleted it. Not out of anger. Though that would have been entitled enough after a man grabbed my hair in a shopping corridor and announced to a crowd that I was fat and disposable. But because I was not angry anymore. I was done. Done the way you are done when something has been over for so long that even the grief has finished its work and left the room clean. Derek Weston was a chapter. A painful one. A formative one. I would carry what it taught me for the rest of my life, and I was grateful for some of what the carrying had built. But a chapter. He was not the book. Some doors, once you close them properly, stay closed. That is not cruelty. That is just the architecture of a life you've decided to protect. I showed the screenshot to Dr. Rhodes at our next session. She read it. Looked at me carefully. How does it make you feel? Tired, I said. The kind of tired that might become peace eventually. That, Dr. Rhodes said, is one of the best things I have ever heard a patient say. On the evening of our 5-month anniversary, Not a milestone most people mark, but Lorenzo had marked it quietly the way he marked everything. He took me to dinner at a small restaurant with mismatched chairs and handwritten menus and the best almond cake I had ever eaten in my life. I laughed when I saw it. The real kind of laughing. The kind from somewhere open and warm and genuinely surprised by its own happiness. "You planned this," I said. "Yes." "The first time, the step outside the lawyer's office, was that planned?" "No," he said. "The first time the cake was simply very good." The corner of his mouth moved in the way I had learned was his truest expression, the almost smile that meant he was entirely present. "But I noted that it made you laugh. And I have been finding reasons to hear that sound ever since." I looked at him across the mismatched table in the warm light, 5 months into a marriage that had been nearly destroyed by other people's agendas and old crimes and new fears and the accumulated weight of two people who had each been broken, in different ways, by trust before. I looked at the man who had answered every question, who had walked into a mall corridor and said, "That is my wife," with the quiet certainty of someone claiming something real and unassailable, who had sat at a kitchen table and admitted, "I was afraid you would leave," in a voice with no performance in it at all. I thought about Rosaria. "He loves you." It was deeply inconvenient. I thought about how inconvenient love always was. How it arrived without scheduling. How it asked things you hadn't planned to give. How it required you to be fully, uncomfortably known by another person and to know them back and to choose, every single day, to remain in the choosing. I had chosen badly once. I had paid for it across 4 years and an afternoon in a mall corridor with 47 witnesses and a man's hand in my braids and a 3-letter word thrown like a stone. That stone had been aimed at the part of me that was once small and silent and afraid. What Derek had not known, could not have known, standing there with his hand in my hair and his cruelty dressed as honesty, was that the woman he was speaking to was no longer that woman. I had been remade. Slowly, imperfectly, the way anything real is remade. Not in a single dramatic moment, but day by day and choice by choice and question by question and no and yes and I need more time and I remember now. Until the woman in that corridor could look him in the eyes and say, "Let go of my hair, Derek." Flat. Steady. Like a grocery list. And when someone walked through the crowd to stand beside her, not in front of her, not towering over her, exactly beside her, she recognized it for what it was. Not rescue. Partnership. That was the entire difference. The thing Derek had never understood, that Fabrizio had never accounted for, that Lorenzo had understood from the very first step outside a lawyer's office on the worst afternoon of my year. "Lorenzo," I said. I love you." I had not said it before tonight. Neither had he, not in words. We had said it in 100 other ways that neither of us had named, in space given and questions answered, in a handkerchief offered without making me ask, in a kitchen conversation that lasted 4 hours, in a study where we worked side by side while something good cooked in the next room. Tonight, with the cake on the table and the warm light and the mismatched chairs, I said it in the actual words. Lorenzo looked at me. Those dark, steady eyes with the lines near the corners from years of carrying things. "I know," he said softly. "I love you too. Since the step. Since the very first moment." I smiled. Outside, the city went about its evening. Inside, 2 people who had each survived the particular damage that comes from loving wrong sat at a small table and loved right. Quietly, honestly, without performance or calculation. It was inconvenient and complicated and imperfect and completely real. It was enough. It was, in fact, everything. Somewhere across the city, Fabrizio Lore sat in a hotel room paid for by lawyers who would be in handcuffs within the week. He watched the press conference on a muted screen. His face was unreadable. After a long moment he switched off the television and sat in the quiet. And then, surprising himself, he smiled. Brief. Genuine. The smile of a man who played a long game against an opponent who turned out to be better, and found at the end of it, that he could almost respect the loss. Deeply inconvenient, he thought. Then he picked up the phone to call his lawyers. The mall security footage from that Tuesday was quietly pulled at Lorenzo's legal team's request. But the 47 people who had been there, who had watched a man grab a woman's braids and call her fat in front of a smoothie stand, and then watched another man walk through the crowd and change the temperature of the air, those 47 people remembered it. They told friends. The story passed the way real stories pass, person to person, slightly changed in each telling, but keeping its essential truth. A woman who didn't flinch. A man who showed up. A moment that was the beginning of something neither of them had expected to need. The running shoes I had come to the mall to buy that afternoon. I found them 2 weeks later at a different shop. I wore them every morning on a route that passed the park with the iron bench and the loud fountain. Sometimes Lorenzo ran with me. He was not built for running, he was built for stillness, for patience, for the long game. But he ran at my pace without complaint, every time. I thought that said most of what needed to be said. The word fat had been meant to reduce me. Derek had thrown it like a stone aimed at the part of me that was once small and afraid and silent. The part that had once believed that taking up less space was the price of peace. He was wrong. He had always been wrong. And the proof was not in anything dramatic. Not in the Interpol case or the FBI charges dropped or Fabrizio lore on the news in handcuffs. The proof was in the simple, daily, unspectacular fact of a woman who ran in the mornings, came home to a house where the walls did not close in, worked at a job that used her full mind, talked to a therapist who asked good questions, and loved a complicated man who answered everything she asked and waited patiently for the questions she hadn't found words for yet. It was not a perfect life. Not a simple one. But it was mine. Fully, completely, without apology. And that was the only thing that had ever mattered. You stayed until the very last word, and that tells me everything. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that real love stands beside you, not over you. Every story on this channel is written for the person who knows their best chapters are still ahead. Yours are.